The other claim that the Chinese make is America polices all the seas. So there's something called freedom of navigation, which is America takes lead responsibility to ensure that all ships can safely pass through areas, kind of an attempt to thwart piracy and that sort of thing. China's argument, and I don't think it's an entirely untrue argument, is freedom of navigation is a bit of a scam. You are just ensuring that your nation's interests are protected by putting ships everywhere and calling it freedom of navigation. And you have all your ships in the South China Sea. Can you imagine if we put ships at the same level that you do in the Atlantic Ocean? And we kind of had a whole bunch of our naval ships off of San Francisco or whatever, off of San Diego,
Yeah.
and said, hey, we're just ensuring everyone can drive their ships safely. You would be really annoyed at us. So what China does is China starts building man-made islands in the South China Sea. And they kind of function as naval bases, as fishery bases, as recon bases, and they actually start just building these islands.
I mean, I don't fully comprehend how you even do that. Like, how do you... Where do you start? What's the foundations? Is it just like floating? Is it like a raft, or...
So
how do you make land?
And so the South China Sea's got some pretty shallow areas. So you've got like the Scarborough Shoal, you've got the Spratly Islands, which are islands that are kind of just right smack bang in the middle.
Yeah.
You've got another group called the Paracel Islands, and so they build around there where the waters are shallower. I have tried on Minecraft to build man-made islands from the bottom up. Takes a lot of time.
Okay.
It's...
Lian Yu.
What?
Have you seen the TV show Arrow?
I saw like the first season. The guy looks like Jordan Henderson. Hey, like the lead actor.
I guess he does a bit.
I watched it I watched like one season. I remember the trailer is like it was this jacked guy.
Yeah, doing the... Yeah.
And he could keep pushing himself up in the warehouse.
Yeah.
That's all I've seen.
I watched the show. I enjoyed it. But yeah, the island that he gets kind of lost on is Lian Yu. And that's where he learns his craft. It's like a classic. It's pretty much Batman, like rich boy, like loses his parents and tries to make the city a better place.
Because isn't Arrow's DC as well, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, like a little bit of... isn't the Flash also super rich? Isn't he supposed to be?
No.
Is he not?
But he does lose his parents.
Does lose his parents.
Yeah.
Man. I need to get up to date with my superhero movies. Two weeks in a row that I've missed your superhero reference.
That's okay. Yeah, Arrow's pretty niche, but it was a good show.
I did really enjoy Lego Marvel Heroes when I was in year 11.
Okay.
I weirdly grinded that game quite hard.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of fun playing it.
Yeah. I'll see it. Yeah. Anyway.
So China builds all these islands in the South China Sea. America's super annoyed. China's like, take your ships out of here. If you take your ships out of here, we won't have these islands because we have as much claim to build these islands as you have to have ships in the South China Sea. Vietnam's also really annoyed. The other big issue is that there's a bit of a skirmish. I think we might have mentioned this on one of the pods before. There's a skirmish between Chinese fishers and Filipino like border police, where basically Chinese fishers ended up in Filipino waters. Filipinos tried to kick them out. China got really upset with it. There's a bit of a skirmish between the two over that. And the Chinese basically went to a tribunal in The Hague saying, hey, these are our waters. And they appealed to the 9-dash line back that Chiang Kai-shek drew. And the Filipinos basically went and said, no, they don't have any authority to it. This is a landmark case because finally the international court was ruling, or the international community was ruling on whether the 9-dash line was legitimate or not. And the international court said no. And basically, this was a win for the Philippines. And theoretically, what that meant was that China attacked sovereign Filipino territory. And according to the Filipino-American Defense Treaty, America should have gone to defend the Philippines because they were attacked. Obama said no. Obama's like, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
That like I know what the treaty says. that is not a good idea to go to war over some fish, over some fishermen.
We talked about this, right, in the China America.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So that kind of had two effects. Number one, the Filipino government actually were like kind of relieved about that. The Filipino government said, we will rip up this court ruling if it means the Philippines and China can have good relations. Like, we will happily let this one go if we can get on as countries. But the Filipinos didn't like this very much. They burned Obama in effigy. Obama became really unpopular there. And the reason why this is interesting was up until 2012, the Philippines and America were doing joint military exercises.
Yep.
And America was actually trying to engage a lot of these Asia-Pacific countries in military training. And they were trying to effectively equip the entire Asia-Pacific to have a good navy and to have a good military. So that China can be contained, because you then surround them with competent militaries if you kind of do that. So they had the Americans had soldiers stationed in one of the Filipino islands called Basilan, and effectively they were trying to, like I said before, build up the surrounding armies and navies. The Americans actually also then trained the Indian military too, and they actually brought their soldiers in and had them trained up. And they also did something called Exercise Malabar, which was a joint Navy exercise between America and India, which then started to include Japan and Australia too.
Okay.
And so Obama's pivot to Asia, it kind of firstly started with a military pivot where Obama was really clear in that we are going to actually, like, enough is enough. We let China grow to be a huge economic powerhouse. They've had their time in the sun. As they're going to build up their military, we're going to surround them with our military force, and we're going to let them know who's boss and who's there. And so we see a huge increase in American ships in the South China Sea policing freedom of navigation. And so we see America have a huge build-up in the South China Sea. We see the Philippines get trained up. We see the Indians get trained up. And we see Australia and Japan invited to join in those joint military exercises. Not to mention, at the same time, that this is where we move into the more conspiracy theory territory. Kevin Rudd. So Kevin Rudd, again, this is how good the time was. It was Kevin 07,
of course,
before Obama 08.
Yeah.
The real golden era. He wants to introduce the mining tax to, as we kind of looked with Congo last week, a mining tax allows the profits of your resources to stay in the country.
Yeah.
So we've got all these big foreign mining companies. Two big ones are BHP Billiton and Rio Tinto. Officially, they're Australian founded, but they're not Australian owned.
Yeah.
I think each one's, I put a video up with their exact stats. One's, I believe, 78% owned, one's 86% foreign owned. And so Rudd basically wants to introduce the mining tax to limit the amount of money going offshore so that the Australian people can profit from their own natural resources.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Americans don't like this very much.
No.
Because these are majority American-owned mining companies. And we've got pro-CIA Labour faction bosses like Mark Arbib and David Feeney, who basically help Gillard Spill Motion get over the line. Gillard comes in, Gillard allows American soldiers to be stationed in Australia, and Gillard very much supports America's foreign policy. Another interesting difference was that Gillard supported the Quad, so India, Japan, Australia, and America forming a united military alliance to surround China, whereas Kevin Rudd didn't support that. And so by the end of Obama's time, Obama's military strategy, he's had some involvement in the Middle East, because like the Syrian Civil War and the Libyan Civil War has brought Obama back into the Middle East, but he has been successful in doing his initial withdrawal and then having all of these American soldiers stationed in the South China Sea and in trying to contain China. The next move he makes is an economic containment policy.